Morning, everybody. Morning, everybody out there. So first of all, let's just honor the fact that we are commemorating Memorial Day this weekend. As we see the town filling up and traffic on the streets, we think of it as a holiday, which it is, but we can also forget why we're doing a commemoration. So Memorial Day is to honor the many men and women who have given their lives for our country. So at some point this weekend, honor that as we are doing the fun things that we do with maybe a little extra time off. Just honor that. I think it's important. So this week, it seems like after so long with things seeming stuck, they're moving kind of fast. And I know some people are like, what is that movie from Home Alone? Like, what's going on? But that's how life works sometimes. It seems like we're stuck for a while, and we're never really stuck. We're always processing. We're getting ready for the next thing or the next chapter of our story, and then all of a sudden, boom, it seems to take off. And I had a great conversation with a good friend of mine this week who since this whole last year, I've just had some quick conversations. And of course, it was on Zoom. And the last big conversation I had with him was a few weeks before we kind of fell into our COVID existence. And the last time we had a big talk, and it was actually in person, I saw him at a convention. We sat down for quite a while. He was excited that he had just taken on this new job or role as a minister in a different community. And it was a big, upscale in a sense. It was a much larger community with a lot more responsibility. And then he was just talking about, wow, this is really a stretch. And for those who don't know, that if you are a clergy person, you have this whole list of things that we do that you don't know about. Basically, we run a small nonprofit corporation when you're not looking. So we do all the other stuff, the prayer stuff, support stuff, class stuff, things of what I'm doing now. But there's this huge thing, and that's what he was really leaping into for this much larger organization that he was going to have this huge responsibility. And of course, we reviewed that, and he says, gosh, if I'd known how much it was going to be, because this whole COVID thing put another layer on it of in a new position, like, I don't know what we're supposed to be doing. This whole thing is new for me, and we just laughed about it a bit, and he thought, God, maybe I wouldn't have taken this job and just stayed where it was safe. But as we went on here, we were just talking about our lives, how they seem to be viewed from a rectangle thing that we often call Zoom or live stream, and how we, in a sense, stage our lives through Zoom. Now, maybe not so much for some of you, but for many of us that in our jobs, in various types of jobs, it's through this rectangle. And we stage our lives when you think of it. And it was interesting, so my friend said, boy, you really look great and rested. Are you using the enhance your appearance mode? I don't know, do you know what that is? So think of this. And actually I wasn't, but not to say that I'm not beyond staging my presence. So most of my Zoom happens in this building, and depending where I am, I can look like 5 years different. So the best spot is right here. So I set up a little table. I've got the stage lights. Puts a nice warm glow on things. And so that's how I stage it. And there's other parts in the building I'm like death warmed over. So through this year, I'm sure you've never done this. You're walking around with your laptop. Oh, I look pretty good here. I look good. No, not doing that. Not doing that. Oh, the shadow's here. But we stage our lives through Zoom. And if you've had a job interview, it was really important where you were. What did you want people to see in the background? And what the interviewers were looking for were things like, how conscious were you of your background? I mean, it's really important. When you go to a job interview in person, you know that you walk yourself into a room, and everything that you wear that day and choices you make is a representation. But this, as we stage our lives, even more so. And of course, the things that were so fun this year are people that weren't quite sure with the technology. Like, they thought the video was turned off. They thought the sound was turned off, and you've probably seen it. So my favorite thing, I feel so badly for this guy. He's an elected official in Canada. You probably saw it. And like all of us, in his office. So he thought the video was off. I know. And so you see him, and they even showed this on TV. So you see him in the background changing from it just having done a run down the street. And you see the poor guy, elected official, in his tidy whities, kind of listening to it. And it's like, what? Not that you look bad or anything, but it's just like, you're an elected official and you have a meeting with other elected officials. You probably shouldn't do it in your underwear. And then, of course, he, mea culpa, and all that. And then, like 2 weeks later, he forgot the sound wasn't off, and I guess everyone heard the big flushing of the toilet. Not that that's terrible, but he already had a history. It's like, he was only like 30-something, and like, okay, aren't you supposed to know technology at this age? Really? But we just had a great time talking about the mishaps of that, of staging our lives. But here we are now, as the world is changing, is that we are now having to imagine or revision our off-screen presence. I mean, think about that. It's no longer just this little box, and I'm not saying our lives have been reduced to that, but so much of our interaction, especially for many of us, our professional interactions have been. And as we are, in a sense, reimagining our lives, revisioning our lives, trying to come to a new story for our lives, that it's different than just staging a little 11 by 17 space or whatever your screen is, and it could be a little intimidating that we show up in person to do things, but not only that, all that we are feeling now, in a sense, that we're getting what we had hoped for so long. What is that saying? Be careful what you pray for, you might get it, in a sense. So it's like, so frustrating for so many months of wanting to expand our lives, and now, not that everything is completely over, but we're giving that opportunity. And to bring what we have been processing as we've been more on our own, into bringing that into our public lives. One thing I've talked quite a bit about this last year, of that one of the opportunities was to do some inner work. What really is lurking there? That we couldn't use the excuse, oh, I'm so busy, look at my calendar. How many Zoom meetings can you have on your calendar? Well, a lot, actually. But this whole idea that we were just put in our stuff, in a sense, and allowed, forced, in a sense, to just kind of sit with ourselves, in a way, and see what was lurking there. And I think that's a good thing to do. That's the whole point of prayer and meditation, is, in a sense, to stop the world for a bit and ask ourselves, what is lurking in there? What is my connection to spirit and the divine? How does that interaction work consciously in my lives? And how can I make it more of a conscious thing in my life? So, in a sense, there was no excuse. You had the time. And whether you consciously sought that or not, we all did it because we had the time. So here we are now, ready to leap forward in the world, and in more ways than we have before. And we have that which we have brought from there that we've been chewing on, and are resetting and restaging our lives and asking ourselves, what is my next chapter, in a sense? What is the next version of my story? And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's huge things of, moving across the country, changing careers. It's that everything just has a different tone and a different feel. And so what does that look like? And even look back towards, February of 2020, whatever your life was like then. And not to say it's going to be completely different, but it was a different time. So there's no, in a sense, just rewinding the tape. It's just we're going into something new. And things have changed permanently. And I'm sure you've paid attention to things like the news of people going back to work where they've been unemployed or laid off for a long time, and they're not willing, or many not willing, to do it the way that they did before. Many have found a more of a life balance of being able to work from home as opposed to being on 2 hours a day on the road and thinking, do I really want to spend 2 hours a day in my car again? The answer is many people are no. And even though some employers says, no, you have to do, it's like, no, I don't think we're doing that. It's interesting too as we look at the news and discussion of what legally we have as a minimum wage, and that's a big discussion, an important one, but it's also interesting how the market forces are going now. People are saying, I'm not going to work for $7.25 an hour. You want me back? You need to refigure this out. You need to throw in a little health care. So don't need the government in there. They're just saying, no, we're not coming back. And the marketplace is responding. So it's interesting how it's just shifting. And some people that worked with a lot with the public during this last year saying, I just don't want to work with people that are always angry anymore. I'm going to do something else. And my sister is a flight attendant, and I can tell you, people are angry. But let me give you a hint. Don't make my sister mad. She has all the power on that plane. Be good. Be good on the plane. Believe me, you want to. So we have all this of we're rethinking, recreating our boundaries, and even though we're going back to some things that look like how we did them before, it's different. And we're consciously making different choices. And I think many of us, as we look back to our lives of being just overcrowded and overbusy, making a more conscious look and saying, well, what do I really want to have in my life? What time do I want to devote to certain things? What really is important? And I think that is one of the great gifts of this last year, that we can ask ourselves, what is really important? So here we are ready for, who knows what's coming up. And it reminds me, in a sense, as we are seeking change, or since change is seeking us, nothing is standing still. If you think you're just going to, it's not going to work, because everything seems to be moving. One often used quote from Reverend Michael Beckwith of Agape in Los Angeles, and many of you have heard this, talking about change. He says that change, at first, in a sense, we are pushed by our discomfort or pain until we, in a sense, get pulled by a greater idea or vision. And as in many things, I don't think it's either or. And I think we are in this point of, in a sense, being pushed by the momentum of what is happening in the world right now, we are having to make a lot of different decisions. Things are changing. And in that discomfort, there is a lot of discomfort. So many people have talked to me about just feeling anxiety and just, I don't know how to even conduct myself in public situations anymore. And even some fear or just the whole idea of feeling clueless, I don't know what's next here. Have no idea what my role is in different areas that I have been in, but yet there's a sense of being on the conveyor belt, the moving sidewalk, and you can't get off. And have you ever tried, or it's almost like you're on an escalator, and have you ever tried going the opposite way on an escalator? I have. Didn't work out well. It really didn't. But there's almost that sense that, the train has left the station, and I don't even know what my role is on this train, but I know it's going to someplace else. And I'm not really sure what that is. So now we get to do our spiritual practice in action as we look at that. And so a few things to look at it as we're trying to make this transformation from just being pushed by circumstances or discomfort and getting to a greater point of feeling that there is a sense of greater vision that's tugging us, even if we don't know where it's going. So Here's a real big truth about human beings. We don't like being uncomfortable. Would you agree? We don't like feeling uncomfortable. Imagine, even on a physical sense, a small pebble in your shoe. It's your whole life purpose to get that out of there. I don't want to be uncomfortable. It hurts. It's terrible. Oh, and then that relief when you finally do it. And now, as life is like, gee, what's going on? We don't like being uncomfortable. It's just part of our human condition. We like things to make sense. We like to have a 5-point plan or a 10-point plan of what we're going to do. We want it to be clear. Well, it's not going to be for a while. And in fact, I think anyone who thinks that their direction right now is really clear aren't being really honest with themselves. So think of it right now as that we're in an era of feeding your lawn. We're feeding our lawn right now. We don't know what seeds are coming up. We're not really sure of the complete design of what's going on out there, but we're just allowing it to be fed. We're opening up to just the idea that something unthought of could be sprouting up from there. So we really are in that discomfort and being almost willing to see a greater vision, but we don't see it. Or maybe we don't see very much of it. But look already, though, in our just like, oh, the world is changing. If you really look at your life, things have already started to change. I'm just really amazed that so many people in our community that I have not seen much in this last year, how much drastic change has happened in their life. In fact, some have moved, and I don't know if we'll ever see them again because life moved on for them. So it's the fertilizer. So you didn't even have to wait till now. It started to happen. And in this, too, the next thing with discomfort is to get over this idea or sense that something's wrong because I'm uncomfortable. Get away from this idea, I just need to feel safe or good or on solid ground again. That there's even this sense in spirituality that if I'm conflicted or not sure what's going on or even in a state of anxiety, that somehow that is a lower state of consciousness and that I need to find a sense of peace, and that would mean all is well. So part of this is just to really lean in to the discomfort. As you go around town and see things are different. About you, I go into businesses and I open doors, so what's the lay of the land here? You want me separated from you? You want a mask? No mask? I don't care, just tell me whatever you're comfortable with, I'm good. But it's just interesting. It's not just you just kind of go in anymore. Things are different everywhere. And there's nothing wrong with that. That part of this is to get out our own corners of our own opinions even of what is you're supposed to do there or not supposed to do there, and just be more comfortable with the indecision of it all even. And know that it actually is okay to feel conflicted. It's okay to see someone doing something that your opinion says is maybe not the best thing to do, and just be with that. We don't have to go on a crusade every time that we come across a different opinion in our life. Just because it's uncomfortable doesn't make it's wrong. And through this, we start to find a revised pathway, a different way of being. It's interesting as we just even look at our spiritual community. It's all up for the air to be decided. I'm not really sure what we're up to anymore. I think at the core of what we're up to is to help support people in their, oh my God, I don't know what we're doing kind of lives. To hopefully be a place where you can feel comfortable with that there's no clear answers. As I've said many times over the years, it's not necessarily my job to answer questions, but to challenge us to keep asking the same ones. And part of this is that we can consciously invite a new story to our lives. And to look at, well, what things have I consistently or regularly seemed to stumble over in my life? Where did I try to show up, and at least in my opinion, I didn't do it so well, or I didn't think I was welcome or worthy or something. So how can I, in a sense, write a different story? Reverend Marty, who used to be involved here a few years ago, had a workshop that he taught that was great for that. So let me just tell you the dynamics of this. This is something we can even do within ourselves. So I think the workshop was write a new story, something like that. And a whole part of that workshop was a process of seeing how do you show up. In your opinion, where do you show up not as your full self? Where do you have a tendency to, it's almost like a self-fulfilled prophecy. I never do job interviews well. You know, I'm never welcomed at that sort of type of place. You know, we have those kind of things in our minds that this never works out for me. And that's our story, actually, that this never works out for me. Or I'm always uncomfortable, or I'm never enough in this situation. And he would take people through this whole process and then have a whole period of time where they would literally sit down with pen and paper and write a new story. That they, again, if there's a type of situation that you always have trouble with, writing about going into that situation and writing a new ending. And a very cathartic part of that workshop, as people shared with me, not only Marty, but the people who took it, was that at the end, people would actually stand up and read what they had written. And there was something amazing about not only reading it out loud, but having people witness, in a sense, that you were putting forth a new ending or a different ending. And most people, from what I heard, who would get up and read that couldn't finish without crying, because it was just this thing of, I'm actually beyond just saying an affirmation or saying a prayer of hope for something. I've verbalized it and I've spoken how my next chapter in my story is going to shift, that when I come to that point of where things seemingly don't go well, I'm taking a different route. And it's just something about that process made it real. So as we kind of start to come out a little bit more, and of course this weekend the town's full, we're doing all sorts of things. But to ask yourself how you can consciously now change your story. What has slowed you down that you are determined now that it won't? Again, what have you told yourself about yourself that you have known that is not true, but now you're going to live it knowing that it is not true? How can we have greater trust and gratitude and opening up to that sense of spirit in our lives and in our hearts that is always our biggest cheerleader, pushing us on, and how can we now listen to that? Big questions, isn't it? But historically, I think that's what this period of time is. You know, I never claim to think that there's a specific reason why something that has been difficult comes up, but we do have the choice to make something good out of it, regardless of how difficult it may have been. And I think this last year has almost been of, okay, let's have a little time out. How, as an individual, do you want to change your story? How, as a nation, do we want to change our story? And certainly there's been so much upheaval that I think it comes from this, we need to change our story. Not everyone's in agreement, but it seems like everyone's in agreement that we need to change our story. We just don't know what story that is. And in a sense, even though it looks like upheaval, I think it's really positive that everyone is asking the question, how do we need to shift? How does it need to look different? How do we individually need to show up? So I just want to close today with something from the 4 agreements from Don Miguel Rios that I included in my blog today that kind of speaks to this. It says, this is the beginning of a new understanding, a new dream. Use your imagination, and a tremendous thing will happen. Imagine that you have the ability to see the world with different eyes, whenever you choose. Using your imagination and your new eyes of perception, I want you to see yourself living a new life, a new dream. Imagine that you have permission to be happy and to really enjoy your life. Imagine living your life without fear and expressing your dreams. Imagine living your life without the fear of being judged by others. Imagine living your life without judging others. Imagine living without the fear of loving and not being loved. Imagine living your life without being afraid to take a risk and to explore life. Imagine that you love yourself just the way you are. This way of life is possible, and it's in your hands. Moses called it the promised land. Buddha called it nirvana. Jesus called it heaven. And the Toltecs called it a new dream. So as we embark on summer, let's take this, in a sense, a new dream. And let's take this to prayer right now. And I know, speak right here now, knowing that the presence of the divine, of Spirit of God is right here where we sit, where we stand, where we move and have our being. And it is at the center of who we are. And as we realize that, as we affirm that, as we open up to that fact, we allow ourselves to see a larger, more authentic vision of our lives. We may be pushed by our discomfort, but we, more importantly, allow ourselves to be pulled by a greater idea, a more appropriate chapter, something that we have been actually dreaming of for quite some time. We allow it to be so. In this time of great change, we realize that we can direct our change. And we do so with great gratitude and great intention and great purpose. And we open our hearts and minds to a greater state. And so in this, I just simply express my gratitude for each person here, each person listening here on live stream. And know that as we make this statement, as we set our purpose, we do the most important thing, in that we let it go. We release what it ultimately needs to look like, because something that is truly changed is something we may not have experienced. We let it go with great joy, with great peace, and great love. And so it is.